order. Can everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, can you do the roll call, please?
Teresa, present. Michelle,
Here.
Kate,
Here.
Gladys,
Here.
Lauren,
Here.
Jesse,
Here.
Bridget,
Here.
Julie,
Present.
Ralph, Al, and me.
Yeah. Okay, next up we have recognitions. Okay. Danbury Education Foundation 23, school year 2023-24 grant award recipients presented by the organization chair, Mayor Dean Esposito. So we have a few recipients, so I'm gonna let
Can
Kevin
we sit
go
up
over.
here?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, as it was stated, the Danbury Education Foundation is a foundation formulated through the mayor's office. Initially, I think it was Mayor Boughton that formulated the foundation. And the intent of the foundation is to be able to raise money to help subsidize different programs that are out there with regards to education. And we're proud to be able to do some of that allocating of the funds tonight. This is Lindsay Setti from my office. And I have to acknowledge Lindsay as one of those in my office in the past year that worked diligently to help raise this money. And one of the biggest fundraisers we have is the Danbury Mayor's Cup. And it's at Richter Park, and we had an outstanding turnout, and Lindsay never says no to anybody, so we had them stacked up 5 deep on each hole. But the reality was for a good cause. And then we had those that sponsored different programs throughout the golf day, different holes and different programs, hole-in-one and stuff like that. But we've raised a substantial amount of money as far as we were concerned, and it was one of the best that we've ever had. And I want to thank Lindsay for that. And I want to give Lindsay the opportunity to hand out the certificates for each of those teachers that requested funding for different programs and went by the board, the foundation board, to evaluate and approve.
Yeah, thank you. So all of our grant recipients tonight applied for funding for kind of out-of-the-box unique programming that would be in addition to what they can do in the classroom. We're super excited tonight to award $45,000 worth of funding to these different projects. We invited all the teachers to come. I'm not sure exactly who's here, but please come up. I have little awards if you are here. So the first one is to Melissa Brostek with Danbury High School for the Computer Art Lab. I have Barbara Bogart with Danbury High School for the Sound Waters Harbor Science for All students.
Lindsay, can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
We're gonna do a picture with everybody at the end. Is that right?
Perfect.
All right, perfect.
I have Allison Tarowski with Danbury High School for the VAS program field trip and Fun Fridays. Melissa Teal, Danbury High School, cultivating cultural awareness. I have Thomas Sparacco with Danbury High School, AFJROTC field trip to the military installation. Benjamin Schultz, Danbury High School Digital Photography Program. John Schlegel, Rogers Park Middle School, 8th grade project-based learning experience, World War II, you be the historian. I have two for Beth Clark. Oh, sorry, no, just one. That's the Rogers Park Middle School Theater Production Field Trip. Amy Rutzel, Danbury High School, Releasing Trout, Connecting the Community. This was, I'm really excited. That would have been something I loved if I was still in school. Hannah Mikesell, Danbury High School, French Cultural Field Trip. Robin McAllister, Morris Street School Garden and Garden Club. Caitlin Lewis, Danbury High School, College and Career Exploration. And the last one, that's a duplicate. Rosemary Dunn, King Street Intermediate, King Street Makerspace Upgrade. And we're super excited.
And we're super excited. I just want to thank you again for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight in front of the board. And as mayor of the city of Danbury, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your diligence and your work each and every month, year after year, and what you do for the citizens of this city, and most of all, the students. Thank you.
Can we get all the recipients to come forward to over there, please?
It's 2856.
My big person.
Yay. All right, perfect. All right, everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Perfect. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Station.
I think that's right. We really did good this year. You know, there were two yeah, right? You'd be like Sharon and the other girls driving your car. And everybody. It's all good. No, hey, good night, everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Go out and run. We'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are you looking for your bag?
No.
You want this open or closed?
Open.
It's an open meeting.
So there's no public participation, so we will move on to the consent calendar. Bridget, can you make that motion, please?
Motion that the Board of Education approve the items on the consent calendar, exhibits 23-100 through 23-107 as recommended.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Educational staff representative. Student representatives, can you come up to this table right here and middle here. You grab an extra chair and pull it around.
Thank you.
Hi folks, thanks for joining us. We are glad to have you here. If you could start by just introducing yourself and then go ahead with what you've prepared for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pearl. I'm Bob President.
And I'm Serena, I'm the Bob VP.
I'm Josh, and I'm Bob Treasurer.
Can you explain to us what, did you say Bob? Can you
Oh.
explain what that means?
We're the Danbury High School Board of Governors. So basically we're the student council, we're in charge of school-wide events, you know, pep rallies, homecomings, this is the dance for all grades. Events like that are like, you know, school-wide instead of grade specific.
Right, so the class councils, they basically cover events for each grade. We're sort of like the supervising, we do overall for the whole school lesson.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so just to start off, basically, we're about a month into school. We just started, a bunch of clubs are starting up. We have Club Fair tomorrow. So Club Fair is essentially going to be every single club that signed up will get a table at lunch to broadcast their club to try to recruit members. And we just hope that it really increases engagement throughout DHS. It encourages students to really participate, increase school spirit, and just overall really try to boost general participation in DHS in student life. Other than that, a bunch of other grade-specific stuff has been happening. The junior class, they just hosted a very successful Spanish Heritage celebration dance. I think that had around 100 members or so, 100 participants who all paid to attend, and the money all went to some fundraiser. As for the senior class, we've had a handful of senior class activities, such as 2 weeks ago we had senior sunset before school started. That was from 6 to 7. And then this Friday, actually, we're having a senior fest. So it'll be just a little celebration for the seniors until right after school till 5 o'clock. A little celebration for the seniors. There'll be food, like bull, and just like bouncy house fun events for the students to just sort of enjoy their senior year. Other than that, as we are getting started with the school year, there are a couple policies that have been newly implemented, such as the missed out policy. Missed out policy is essentially a new this year. It's a policy where students that are, if they're late to class, they have to go down to the office and get a missed out pass, and it goes on the record. Not like an official record, but it goes on some record that they've missed out. So this is to try and keep students much more accountable for being late, because DHS previously does have a very high like tardy or like skipping class numbers. So hopefully this will sort of like calm that down and improve attendance numbers in general. Other than that, we have like Spirit Week and Pep Rally going on, and I'm just gonna let Serena talk about that.
Okay, so we have officially scheduled the week for our Spirit Week. It's going to be October 10th to October 13th, which is 4 days. And just to go over the themes, because, you know, it's stuff everyone wants to know. Our first day is going to be Barbenheimer themed, which some of you know, some of you may know the movies Barbie and Oppenheimer came out on the same day. And it was kind of like a cultural movement for us kids. So we wanted to do a day based off that. After that, we have Jersey versus Jersey Shore, which should be fun because if you know the show, it gets very chaotic. Then we have, you know, the classics. We have color days where freshmen are pink, sophomores are purple, I believe, juniors green, the seniors black. So that's going to be Thursday, and then on Friday we're going to have good old orange and blue day and ends with homecoming. But one thing that we did last year for the first time in over like decades that we are going to continue on this year is we're going to do a pep rally before the homecoming game and dance, which is going to be on October 14th this year. That pep rally is going to be on Thursday, so the day before the homecoming game. And to organize for that, we've created a ball committee, which we separated into 3 parts, and 2 of those parts are dedicated solely for getting ready for the pep rally. They've come up with a lot of ideas for games to do during the pep rally, like tug of war, like stuff involved with balloons or water balloons specifically, and other fun activities like that. We'll be hearing more, I'll update you on those next time because nothing's set in stone yet, but we are making remarkable progress. We have 2 ball committees meeting tomorrow to get further brainstorming and work done. So our plans with the pep rally are going well, and for Spirit Week, we're collaborating with Peer Leadership, which is a group in Danbury High School that kind of fosters school spirit, interacts with the community. So they're helping us out with posters, banners, wall decorations, window decorations, sorry. And lastly, for the pep rally, we are going to, for the actual pep rally, besides the games, we're going to have a lot of the fall sports come out, cheerleaders, band, and they're going to be performing routines of their own. And we hope that it will just be a really fun, interactive way for DHS to foster some school spirit. And I think that's all for me right now. And Josh is going to talk a bit about homecoming.
So I'm just going to give a brief kind of view on homecoming. We're going to start planning before homecoming tomorrow with our first block committee meeting. We will start planning for homecoming decorations, and homecoming will be on Saturday, October 14th. After a lot of deliberation, we came to the Tangled movie theme. We will run tickets through on Ticketspicket because last year was kind of a fiasco selling tickets. So this year we want to kind of get it more streamlined, and online is probably the best way to do it. And to meet those online tickets, we're going to have refreshments to meet the amount of tickets that we're planning on selling, which should be around 1,100 at the maximum. For homecoming court, we have a few applicants, and the nominations are starting to come through pretty quick. The applicants will be announced at the pep rally, and finally for freshman elections, we have 4 candidates because the freshmen, they don't really want to apply for school office, but we're getting some candidates going and the numbers are starting to grow. But we started off at 4 and it should be going up accordingly. Thank you. We're excited to start the year, and thank you for having us.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
So, Pearl, Serena, Josh,
Yes.
welcome. We are happy to have all of you here at the board meeting and representing Danbury High School in our school district. So you should know the board and we had a meeting earlier, and we were talking about this missed out initiative at the high school. And so can you just tell us a little bit more on exactly what folks were missing out on and what the initiative was about, and how the initiative is going? Because I did speak to Principal Donovan a couple weeks ago about this.
Right, so the missed out policy is the bell rings at 7:20 every morning. And the missed out policy is essentially that once the bell rings, the student cannot get into the room. The teachers have to shut the door, lock the door, and any students that show up late, they're sent directly to the level office for a missed out pass.
And what are we missing out on exactly?
Actually,
Class.
yeah, like missing like being tardy, missed out. Do you know what record was on?
I'm not sure, definitely attendance, but it, I'm pretty sure after a certain amount of missed outs or like, tardies, you can get detention, and then at one point you get an in-school suspension, and then after that you have a parent intervention, so it can add up pretty easily. It goes on, school records.
Right, so while Pearl is grabbing the microphone back, 'cause I love this idea about missing out and placing importance on learning time. And so I'm curious how behaviors have changed, if at all, from you guys' perspective at the high school since this initiative has been implemented.
Honestly, I think the missed out policy.
Or maybe you're not in the hallway, so you don't know.
I think the missed out policy is more to the benefit of teachers, just so it relieves that pressure on the teachers themselves to assign those detentions and assign those tardies. It's a much more like, it's a higher, I guess, like supervisor way of assigning detentions and tardies without putting all that pressure on the teachers to actually do it. So as for like the student point of view, I'm not sure how much it's actually impacted.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit because I had a couple of visits to my level office recently, and well, to talk to my counselor, don't worry, to talk to my counselor, and in the process, I met a lot of kids who missed out, and from the way that they were speaking, I don't believe that they've truly gotten the concept yet. I feel like it hasn't truly, because the kids that I did talk to, they were like, this isn't going to stop anyone, it's not going to stop me, I can take an ISS or 2 or 3. So that's the perspective that I got from the kids that were in the office. I'm not so sure about, I mean, I do know kids that, are generally good kids, but got a little late and got missed out past, and now they're like, super careful to make sure that they're at school, in class, on time. But for the kids that, like, it's in the office and they're like, I can take an ISS or 2, it hasn't really, registered yet. But perhaps it will eventually. I'll keep you updated.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Josh has some thoughts.
Yeah, it's just I get to see the point of view from like the freshmen because my brother's a freshman. The current class, like the sophomore class and up, they're kind of used to the I missed class or whatever. But the freshman class, they're kind of scared straight with the missing out policy. So I mean, I know my brother is at least, and I mean, he hasn't shown up to class late. He got like the school layout pretty quick because of the missing out policy. So at the beginning of the school year, the freshmen kind of had that hit home for them. And I don't really see that many freshmen in the hall. I just, it's the same people.
Three of you, thank you so much for the update. We really appreciate you. It's a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Let me make a comment. I just want to comment a little bit on the missed out. So I was up at Danbury High School for instructional rounds this past week, last week, and the prior to the implementation, one of the things that we'd often see at the beginning of classes, kind of the trickling in of students and the teachers kind of waiting to start the lesson. And so over time, that kind of erodes some of the instructional time. But this last round of instructional rounds where we were up there, the kids were in the classroom and instruction started right on time. And that's one of the great benefits. And the hallways were clear, so the policy is working. The other reason that Mr. Donovan implemented it is because it has to do with the academies. And I think he explained this, and you may have recognized some of what I'm saying here. But to be an employable adult, you have to be on time to work. And as part of the academy and building those soft skills in students, we're trying to instill the idea that being on time is important. Otherwise you do miss out, not just in class, but potentially on jobs. So thank you very much for speaking tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay. Our ACE representative.
It's just me tonight. I'm just gonna make it. Y'all know me. I'm Haley. Good evening, Board of Ed members, Cabinet, and community members. Thank you for allowing me to represent and speak on behalf of the Alternative Center for Excellence. ACE is happy to welcome 30 new students since the start of the school year, which includes staff participating in student entrance interviews this week and next week. ACE will be holding its Humanities Department grade level benchmark on Friday, September 29th. The ACE Humanities Department has created a benchmark Schoology classroom that the entire student body participates in based on your highest grade level in English and social studies. Thank you, ACE Humanities Department, for all your diligent work on this school-wide learning activity. The benchmark process takes place during a 3-hour block, and students will have an opportunity to demonstrate their skill level with regards to their tasks. After the benchmarks are completed, ACE will hold an afternoon barbecue to welcome students and staff back to the 2023-2024 school year. It will be a great day filled with both hard work and team building. The first ACE Parents Night was held on Monday, September 19th at 6 p.m. Parents and students began the evening together to hear about upcoming events and school goals for the 2023-2024 school year. After that, parents and students will have the opportunity to follow their student schedule and meet with ACE staff. Let's start. On October 5th, Kyle Tricola and Katia Piragostini will be taking the astronomy class in the African American, Black, and Latino Studies classes to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. In addition to the exhibits within the museum, students will be attending a show at the Hayden Planetarium to view worlds beyond Earth. Students will return to ACE by 5 p.m. ACE has been taking a twice-annual poetry hike since 2017. On Friday, October 13th, ACE teachers from art and English classes are bringing 25 to 30 artists and poets from ACE to Washington, Connecticut to hike at the Hidden Valley Preserve. Inspired by the beautiful woods, the Chicago River, and the transcendental cliffs that span the railing on the River Bridge, the group will spend the day hiking and riding and sketching nature in the beautiful New England countryside. ACE will be administering our school-wide PSAT for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders on Wednesday, October 18th. On the stairs, seniors will be transported to DHS to participate in the senior activities occurring on that day. For Suicide Prevention Week and month, the ACE students could choose to attend 2 flex periods where they learned about suicide prevention and the Talk Away the Dark program, as well as the 988 helpline. The students also created awareness posters that are displayed in the halls and on the designated bulletin board. During our flex times, the students at ACE are creating large paper sunflowers of promise to bring to Praxair Cancer Center. This is the 3rd ACE Cares School project with and for Praxair. These sunflowers have student-written messages for the Praxair cancer patients, caregivers, and staff to read. We plan to deliver the sunflowers on Wednesday, 10/7. Once delivered, they will decorate the waiting room. Thank you all for allowing us to share what is going on with our ACE family, and have a nice evening, stay healthy, and remain ACE strong.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions? No? All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
you next time.
Okay. Okay, moving on to action items. Kate, can you do action item A?
I'll make a motion for the Board of Education to accept the July and August 2023 financial report in accordance with Exhibit 23-108.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Bridget? Questions or comments?
May I make a comment, please?
Sure.
I just want to make sure that all board members are aware we had a conversation at the Finance Committee meeting last night. There were some expenses that we did not anticipate with regard to, we couldn't anticipate with regard to the IT breach that happened. So there's approximately $202,000 expense associated with that. And I know that we're probably going to have this conversation at some point about how the special education legislation has changed. But my understanding is that we're looking at a potential $400,000 increase this year as we're responsible for educating special education students through age 22 through the end of their school year. So that's just so that folks are aware, there's a $600,000 cost that we could not have anticipated when the budget was originally drawn. And we're going to hopefully figure out how we're going to cover those expenses.
Thank you, Kate.
Also, flooding is the cities. That's the cities.
Thank you, Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Gladys, can you do action item B, please?
Yes, I make a motion. Action item B, Marsh Street School Family Resource Center continuation of service application. I move that the Board of Education approve application to the Connecticut State Department of Education for the continuation of services at Marsh Street Family Resource Center in accordance with Exhibit 23-109.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments about that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Excellent. Jesse, can you do action item C for me, please?
Sure. I motion that 2023-2024 Teacher and Administration Evaluation Plan. I move that the Board of Education approve 2023-2024 Teacher and Administrator Evaluation Plan in accordance with 23-110.
Second.
Second.
Julie? Perfect. Any questions or comments?
Just a question, to the superintendent. As a board, I'm trying to think back, and maybe somebody, Lauren was here. Is this the first time we did a plan like this for teacher evaluation? And then going back maybe a couple of years ago, I can't remember.
So, Ms. Cooper, it's something we have to do annually. Last year, we did it in September, I believe the last meeting in September, or the first meeting in October. Years prior, it was done in May, when we submitted it to the state and identified our plan for the year. In terms of our calendar, we formally start to observe staff no later than October. And so if we can get it in by our first meeting now, it kind of ensures our alignment that we have a plan in place approved by the board. I think Kelly has some additional.
Just to give a quick overview of what the content of the TEVAL plan, you have a copy in front of you. There are no proposed changes for this year, so it is the exact same plan as last year. The only updates are calendar updates, as it proposes a timeline. So when teachers or administrators need to turn in their professional practice plan, and then timelines for which we have to evaluate. And it's broken up into two categories, the first being new teachers, and we classify beginning teachers as year 1 or year 2, or anyone that is below proficiency, so a struggling educator. And then anyone with 3 or more years of experience. And so for our new teachers, we do 2 formal observations, 2 informal observations, and then 2 reviews of practice. And essentially the difference between a formal and an informal is length of time. The formal is longer. And the formal observation requires both a pre and a post conference. The whole premise behind our teacher evaluation plan is to model teacher growth. And the research shows that conversations about professional practice and feedback around that practice about what is seen and what is observed is the most influential factor in helping teachers to grow. Interestingly, while the observation is important, it's really the feedback and the pre-conferencing and post-conferencing that make the most impact. And so those are required for formal observations. For informal observations, it's the feedback after the observation. And then reviews of practice are talking about checkpoints throughout the year, so usually middle and end of the year. How are things going? How are we progressing towards your goals? Do you need to adjust, make any changes? And then for our experienced teachers, so 3 or more years, and people that are showing proficiency or above, so those have 1 formal observation, 1 informal, and 2 reviews of practice. And under both plans, I think what's important is this was a change, I believe we added last year or the year prior, is that a teacher can request an additional observation as long as it's done by the 150th day of school, so about 30 days prior to the end of the school year. So oftentimes, an observation is a snapshot, one point in time. We all know people have phenomenal days and sometimes we have not great days. And so it allows the teacher the opportunity to ask for additional feedback if they so choose. So if they feel that they want the principal to come in on a specific day where they're modeling or demonstrating something they want feedback on, or if they feel the administrator maybe caught them on an off day one day, it gives that opportunity. And the administrator is always allowed to go in and do more observations. So these are minimums. You must be in compliance with the plan, but you can always do more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other, go ahead.
Sorry, quick question, Kelly. So if a teacher does make a request for a second observation or a third observation, depending on which segment they're in, are you taking the average of those for proficiency or?
Yes, so it is calculated on different factors, but yes, it is the cumulative average of those observations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Louisa.
The amount of observations and the standards that we have, is that exclusive to us, or is that standard in different districts, or what do we model it?
Every district submits in their own plan, but I would say we're very typical compared to other districts as far as the amount and the requirements on that. I think initially we did a little bit more of but shorter observation sessions with more frequent feedback the longer we transition to, and that's not dissimilar to other districts around us. And the last thing I should add is that we're currently, our PDAC committee is currently working on understanding the shifts and changes in the state teacher evaluation model, and so we are looking at significant changes for next school year. So more updates on that will be coming, and the frequency and the types of observations is part of that conversation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Excellent, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Laura.
Welcome.
So I'd like to follow up first. I have A through E in terms of superintendent report updates. But if it's okay, I would like to add and just elaborate a little bit on the impact that Kate referred to regarding the new legislation around special ed students who are 22 years old. And so we had projected a number at approximating it at $400,000 impact for this year, which yes, is indeed unplanned for this year. But I know Kelly also had some additional thoughts and language she wanted to share with the board.
Sure. So I just want to make sure there's an understanding is right at the end of the last legislative session, it went into effect on July 1st. So we found out the last week or so of June that it was a possibility, and then was voted into law on July 1st. And essentially what it does is it extends the school year for students that are 22 until June 30th, or the last day of school in June. And so previous legislation happened right after post-COVID, where students could stay until June 30th of their 21st birthday. We were doing that for years. Then they extended it until their 22nd birthday. So we had a student that was turning 22 in October, leave in October, one in April, leave in April. And so they weren't finishing out that full year. And so that legislation was put into effect to kind of have everyone have the same end date. It does have a significant impact as we have students that we were anticipating exiting out 2 or 3 weeks into July. And then we have other students that we were thinking were going to exit out, in October or April and so forth. And so, I did look at the students that we have. It is about 27 students that we're talking about. And I say approximately, as oftentimes we will have a student or two say that they're going to return in the fall and then decide to exit for other programs and so forth, and they're allowed to do that through the end of September. And so I'll have an exact figure for that October 1st count for you. And But I think we have a couple of high-cost kids, I will call them, that have different or unique programming. And so the unanticipated expense of having those costs for an additional, in some cases, couple of months, in other cases, closer to a full school year, is where the figure came out for that $400,000. I do just want to add, though, that in this legislation will continue, we are going to need to look at our transitional programs, as I will say that we are maxed out on space as far as capacity, and keeping students anywhere from a couple of months to almost an additional school year longer is going to impact the capacity in those programs. So that's something my team is currently working on to see, for next year, will we need additional support in any of our transition programs? And those typically are students that are done with their high school credit requirements, but require those transitional skills. So they haven't quite mastered some of those life skills in order to be successful in transition to the next steps, be that post-secondary education, workforce, or some other programming option. And so I do think that this will have not just the impact this year, but we'll need to look in future years. So I just wanted to alert the board to that. I don't know if there's any questions.
Teresa?
What kind of courses, programs do they need if they already have the credits?
Sure.
What are we talking about?
So students that are under IEP, so individual education programs, there is a requirement in the federal legislation for what's known as transition planning. So that is independent living skills, post-secondary education skills, and employment skills. So a student may be done with their high school credit requirements for English, math, science, social studies, but still need more support in the special education realm to be able to maximize their independence, to be productive, citizens once they exit. So what we do is just because they met their, core credit requirements, we do not issue a diploma because they still need additional support from us. And so that this legislation allows a student potentially, not all of our special education students stay beyond 4 years of high school, but some do. These are traditionally our students with more significant needs and disabilities, and they just need some additional support to become the most independent that they can be. And then so they stay on for that additional instructional time. Sometimes it's 1 or more years. And then they receive their diploma as they exit out of our transitional program. So we have a couple different transition programs, but one being a partnership with WestCon, where students audit and attend classes. So they're getting support on a post-secondary track. And the other one is supported employment, where they go off to work sites with job coaches and support, and so that those individual students are getting support on the post-secondary ed. And both programs incorporate the communication and life skills that students will need, things like balancing a checkbook, how to apply for a driver's license, how to successfully navigate the bus and local transportation systems, things of that nature. And the population of students that we're talking about that need these programs are students for whom they would not be able to independently pick up those skills. So they're going to need some explicit teaching from special education teachers and other coaches to be successful in this.
Thank you for that. Sure. Question, you said that there was a space issue. Where are these students now? Are they at the high school? Is that where the transition program is?
Yeah, so one of the transition programs is housed out of the high school. It's located next to the auto body shop, or formerly the auto body shop right there. And because it's separate from the high school, it's kind of their own little space. Those are the students that go off to our employment sites. So they start and end the day at Danbury High School. They are Danbury High School students. And they're bused to and from, but during the middle of the workday, they are out in the community with supports, doing various different jobs. We have students actually that are working in this building. There are students working at Lesser Eagle Popcorn. There are students that are working TJ Maxx, ShopRite, you name it, City Hall, Baringer, Ingelheim, a bunch of different companies in that regard, formerly at Cardis. So we have students all throughout the community. The other program is housed at WestCon, and students take, their programming is located on the WestCon campus. And so while they are technically Danbury High School students, they are off-site receiving their instruction.
Great, thank you. Teresa?
Do we provide them transportation for all those jobs?
We do, yes.
Okay, that's the cost.
Any other questions?
There are, if I could, there are other, I mean, transportation is a cost, but there's costs to hiring teachers, para-educators, there are other programming costs, but transportation is certainly a cost.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so the report this evening focuses on enrollment, class size, and so I wanted to give the board and the community an update on where we are with enrollment ahead of our October 1st submission to the state. And so as of this afternoon, we are hovering at 12,000 exactly. And so 126 students, and I'll just give you a breakdown at the different levels. 126 students at ACE, Reach Endeavor, plus, which includes some out-of-placement students, 3,592 at Danbury High School, 745 at Westside Middle School, 871 at Rogers Park, 1,095 at Broadview, and for our elementary schools across the board, it's 5,446. And for some context, this might help a little bit. When our demographers came in and conducted their study in June of 2022, their projections for the elementary schools were 5,311. We are at 5,446. They projected our middle schools to be at 2,416. These were the high projections. We are at 2,711. And they projected our high school to be 3,746. This was including ACE. And we are at 3,717. So about 30 under with, well, we can reach that tomorrow. So we will see how we're doing. We did, as we continue to clean up the data, we certainly have more kids coming in, but our offices are also cleaning up the data for the students who have left us. But as you can see, we are continuing to grow as well across the district. Nothing has changed in that regard. Danbury continues to be an attractive place for our families to move to. Yes?
Do we still have students waiting to be registered, or is that kind of like, yeah, okay.
We do. And so this is something we've been talking about in our leadership meetings every week. We had, ahead of the October 1st submission, is really important to me, to us as a team, to make sure we addressed the students and families in the queue, if you will, who are still waiting to be registered. And so we have families who are waiting, and it's not unlike the Department of Motor Vehicle. You have to have materials to bring in before you can get your license, in this case to be registered. And so our office, we've deployed people to the registration office to help to cut into the list, to follow up with families, because we have a deadline, meaning October 1st, because we certainly have essentially, tuition is not the right word, but revenue associated with those numbers, that are formal numbers that are going to the state. And so we want to make sure we can account for every student that we're going to be serving, because we know we're going to continue to enjoy enrollment increases well after the October 1st submission date. So we will continue to have some updates for you. Carol Wanzer typically comes in front of the board the end of October, early November, to talk about official numbers and talk about enrollment trends. Perfect timing not only for budget season, but also just to give everyone an update of the numbers for this projected school year. So we will have certainly some more details for you in that meeting, including class size, what that looks like. 612, I can share with the board, our K-5 numbers have stabilized post-pandemic at this point. Our averages across the district are in the 22 per class size range. We do have certainly some exceptions in some of our schools. Stadley Ruff, who during the pandemic, we actually added sections, and although we reduced some of those social distancing classrooms that we added during the pandemic, Stadley Ruff, we were not able to reduce from that school because, well, enrollment at that building still is maintained. And so Stadley Ruff has four sections averaging 25 in the classroom. And then at Ellsworth, they have 3 sections in grade 5. Grade 5 is closed at Ellsworth, and they have 26 in 3 of their sections at grade 5 at Ellsworth. And so despite those numbers that you're hearing, the numbers are still averaging 22 across the district. But as you might imagine, we do have pockets of some higher class size in our K-5 classrooms. Middle school and high school gets a little bit more complicated. We're talking about class size in classrooms, and when Carol Wanzer joins us, she'll be able to give us a more comprehensive look into classrooms and what that looks like. I can share with you ahead of that meeting and that conversation, regardless of what class size looks like, our buildings are certainly at capacity. And certainly there's a lot of classrooms at Danbury High School that are well within the contracted range and the range that the board would like to see. But 3,600 students in the building is just too many. So that's a conversation for a follow-up conversation I'm sure we will continue to have. And that's why we have a new building and school being built. Superintendent goals, national standards of practice visit. Gentlemen, I will start this conversation and ask Kara to elaborate. We had a gentleman by the name of Jay Still. He is a spokesperson from not the Academies of Nashville, but an extension of that organization. I just want to speak to my opportunity to participate in this process. The national standards of practice really speak to our role in making sure Danbury Public Schools can serve as a national model. And there are some things expected of us as board members. There are things expected of us as a district leadership team, things that are going to be expected of us at the school level in terms of leadership, and certainly of all of our teachers in our classrooms. And this continuum, this standards of practice, helps to articulate that in a way that I think we will all be able to understand. And we've worked it out where Jay can come back here, I believe, in the spring. He's going to have an opportunity to walk the board through a similar exercise. He pushed the staff and the leadership team through when he made a stop in Danbury as he was traveling all throughout the country making these presentations. Kara, if you can give the board and community a little deeper look into that work that day, that the high school engaged in on that Tuesday to professional development day.
Sure, so just to clarify, Jay Steele, he was the original architect of the Academies of Nashville. So he's one of the founding members. He was also their chief academic officer for many, many years. He left Nashville, he founded, obviously he did his job so well that he became very popular around the country and around the world. He founded the National Career Academy Coalition, which is NCAC. So from time to time, you may have heard me reference NCAC or work with NCAC. So they are the organization that we partnered with just pre-pandemic to develop our 13-page action plan. We were in the background trying to get ready on how to launch this, how to roll this out, how to prepare the staff for it. So we worked with Jay in person for a whole day to develop that plan. And from time to time, we used to check in with him to kind of go over our problems of practice and how we would roll out. In the meantime, a lot of our professional development for our administrators have been around NCAC standards of practice, and that's something you're going to start to hear a little bit more and more. And so just the same way that the Connecticut has their the national Common Core standards or Connecticut standards for a content area or for an organization, academy models, effective academy models also have standards. So what makes for a quality academy? Are they rigorous? What is the level of community involvement? What is the level of sustainability? What is the level of teaching and learning? The business partner, active engagement. There's a variety of different quadrants along a continuum of excellence that we would be striving for over time. And the rubric or continuum really guides our work and holds ourselves accountable, helps us to kind of do a self-reflection, like where are we on this right now, like a little check. And then, each year we kind of work towards getting a little bit stronger in fulfilling, what makes for a quality academy program. So we brought Jay in to talk to the staff to kind of give a high-level overview of how the standards work. And that's one of the things that we'd like to do with you this year is to make sure that you fully understand them as well. As a district team, we're learning about them deeply, and our administrative team will be learning about them deeply, and then our teachers will be learning about them as well, and we'll all be putting them into practice. We've seen, Nashville's been at this for 17 years or longer. We've seen some schools that achieve national model standards of excellence within 3 to 4 years, which is really fast, right? And that's like the first cohort goes through, they bring in NCAC to do a deep evaluation to see all the components, and they get rated and evaluated. That's how you can be certified. And then people start coming to your district to see how well you're doing things, which is great. But just the idea that we hold ourselves to the highest standards available is really the goal of what we're talking about. And we're very fortunate to be partnering with Jay Steele. He's not just working in the country right now, he's in different countries right now, setting up these academies. He's doing a lot of work in Thailand right now, which is unbelievable. They hired him to set up, I think it's close to 30 academies, full STEM, full on STEM, and green energy, and all these, like the government, is going full tilt with the academy model to help produce Thailand and to help produce, and further Thailand's goals. So many countries he's working in. He's actually in Hawaii. He's doing a lot of work there as well. One of our former employee of Hawaii, Melissa Niku, she's now our STEM department head, was one of the first people who kind of got a chance to see the model in action. And they had a previous connection. So we were fortunate for that relationship, and we've been working with them for the last couple of years now. So March, our target date right now is the middle of March, when we can get Jay back in town to come and do a workshop with the board, which I think you'll enjoy.
Teresa.
The standards for the academy model, we're in sync with the state's standards?
Yes, so they're different in the sense that, the Connecticut doesn't have academy standards to guide that work.
No, but what
So
we
these are
have,
national standards, absolutely.
but what we have is in sync.
Yes, and so our academic standards don't change, they fold within the academy structure and model.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So the next update is from the Commissioner's Health and Safety update. I believe it was last Friday, Kelly and I had the opportunity to attend the Commissioner's Friday update regarding health and safety. Some of the discussion, or the vast majority of the discussion, was around the reality of entering fall and winter season, and the impact this can have on our children and frankly our staff and community. And so of course the discussion of COVID came up, of course the discussion of the flu came up, and also the discussion of respiratory illnesses like RSV. And so some of the many recommendations from these health officials talked about what they are seeing in hospitals around the state, and that they are indeed beginning to see an increase in COVID cases in hospitals around the state. Some of the monies that were used previously to monitor COVID cases in the community is not something they're monitoring in communities right now, and so the hospitals is where they're going for this information. Our local health director and local health directors across the state, I would imagine, like Kara Prunty, are beginning to partner with state officials to get further guidance. We did receive further guidance in the event our staff or our children have indeed come back positive for COVID. And so Kelly's going to speak to some of these recommendations for us. Ahead of that, I would just also like to share some of the concrete recommendations that I left the meeting with, is that we should be encouraging our community to make sure they proactively get the flu shot, proactively consider the COVID booster, and if they feel comfortable, not to get the RSV shot at the same time, but prioritizing the first two first, because they are seeing an increase in COVID in the communities, and then the last one, the RSV. And Kelly, I'll ask you to share some other recommendations that came from the group. Let me just also say, I do not anticipate any action from the board, at least considering where we are now. I will ask Carol Prunty for further guidance on this, but where we are right now, I do not anticipate we're going to need to have any policy implications with this group. Kelly?
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. So what we are doing is we're in the process of just relooking at our sick day guidelines, which we always have in place for parents. General reminders, if your student has a fever, they have to be fever-free for 24 hours, right? If they have conjunctivitis or pink eye, they cannot come to school until they're treated for 24 hours, those types of things. And we're trying to balance this with the post-COVID world of we want kids at school, right? Do not keep your kids home for lengthy periods of time if they do not need to be home. But we also need to remind people that when children are sick, they need to stay home and they need to rest for their own well-being as well as the well-being of everyone else in the classroom around them. And so related to COVID is very similar to what we ended last school year with. They are recommending that if your child is diagnosed with COVID or a staff member, that you're notifying the school of that diagnosis. You can use a home, we cannot require, but we are strongly recommending that you do a test, and that can be an at-home test. And in those guidelines, we also remind families that if you have tests left over in your home from last year, to check the lot and expiration dates. Some of the expiration dates, and you can just Google it, have been extended. So the lot number, you can see that even though it expired in the spring of 23, they're now saying it's valid until the spring of 24. So to check those, but a home test kit is fine if you so choose. And if you are diagnosed with COVID, that you are still having to remain home for 5 days, and then on days 6 through 10 returning with a mask on for the health and safety of everyone. Again, we are strongly recommending, we cannot require, but I think that it's imperative to get the message out to our community that this is for the health and safety of everyone in our community. And so if you do have COVID, you are to remain home for 5 days. We have seen COVID cases in both staffs and students. I don't want to alarm anyone. They're not at alarming rates, but we are seeing it. And so these are, the best health and safety practices. Also a reminder to our families that if you would like to wear a mask, that children are able to, staff are able to. We are not seeing many elect to do so, but that is an option for anyone that is feeling more comfortable with that. So we will be putting this all together in a revised sick day guidelines and memos to our families, and it will go out probably the first week of October, I think is what we decided.
Did you say after the 5th day, come back to school the 6th day, that is not required for you to wear?
Strongly recommend.
You strongly recommend, but it is not required. I just want to make sure that that's what I heard. Okay, great, thank you.
I just wanted to commend the school nurse at Broadview because she has already implemented this policy. Unfortunately, we knew that personally, but she strongly recommended the mask wearing, which we did follow through on. And I think giving parents the option and the good information. And she was extraordinary in her follow-up and conversation with me to make sure that I was clear on the details.
Thank you, that's great feedback. And I will say for those of you, we will bring her to a future board meeting, but we do have Carrie Berg. She is our new coordinator of health and nursing services. She's replacing Kathy O'Dowd, who I know spent a lot of time with this group during COVID. Carrie comes to us with a wealth of experience, formerly worked at the school-based health center at the high school, so she's very familiar with the district, with the community, and she will be leading this and making sure that all of our nurses are aware of the policy and are implementing it.
Can we offer the flu tests and COVID tests at the school-based health centers?
Yes, they are already offered and available at the school-based health centers.
Would you need approval or some sort of slip signed by a parent in order to get any kind of?
So if a student asks for this, yeah, so if a student is a member of the school-based health center, which requires parent permission, they could then go there to get the test. So the signature allows them access to any of the services that are offered there. They could also go there, let's say they had an earache and needed to be checked for an ear infection. So it's consent to all the services that are provided at the school-based health center, and those are offered in some of our schools. So the Rogers Park and Broadview have a school-based health center. The high school has a school-based health center. Ellsworth we're working on.
Do you have a list of those services that the parent is going ahead and saying yes? Like, I get it if you're giving them,
That is
you know, an aspirin, but, you know,
That is
hence
in-
I say that there are other
Consent
injections.
form through school-based health center.
Yeah.
And that's,
And
that's
it'll
given
show
in there.
everything that
The
you would.
consent form outlines the services.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you speak for just a moment about the partnership with the local organization who's helping to run the school-based health centers?
Yes, they've been great partners with us, so I will say during COVID, you know, whether it's distributing anything that we needed across the community, if there is a need of any of our students, they have been able to gain vaccines for our students, medications for our students, of course, all with parent consent. But we enjoy their partnership and appreciate their service to our students and our community. So I think they've been a great partner. And certainly, I know we've been exploring ways to expand, you know, if and when we can.
One more question, sorry. The health and services, we're talking obviously, you know, shots or whatever, but is that also mental? Is there,
There's
so
both.
under that, so when you're signing, is there any way we can get a layout of what's covered in there?
Sure, it's not, I want to be clear, it's not run by Danbury Public Schools, it's a partnership with Civic.
Yeah.
And so certainly we can share a copy of the
Please.
form that parents receive and you can look at that.
Yes, like if I were to sign off, I would just like to know exactly what I would be signing off on.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the next item on the report is item D, budget calendar and development. And this is really just making the board aware through the finance committee first. Wanted an opportunity to review really a calendar of events leading up to our budget process that I would like to get started much earlier than in previous years. And so through our committee, and all of the liaisons, meaning the cabinet liaisons that work with the board leader on the committee. And so whether it's the curriculum committee, Kara working with Kelly and Lauren Daly and saying, hey, here are some staffing recommendations we envision for the 24-25 school year. Here are some supplies and curriculum supports we envision for the 24-25 school year. Mike Seeley doing the same thing with Michelle Coelho on our Sites and Facilities Committee. So whether there are some initiatives around security, whether the same initiatives around IT, or facility upgrades that need to be made, we walk every committee through those projections for next year. And we want to get started as soon as October. And so I believe it was yesterday or last Thursday, all the dates appear to be the same now. But it was last Thursday, I believe, we had the finance committee meeting. So it was, that was initially, it was canceled on Thursday, so we had it on. Yes, yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So, and the agreement was, in our next finance committee meeting, we would speak to the budget calendar and get some feedback from the committee before bringing it to the full board so that we could begin to move forward with the plan. So I just wanted to make the board aware that that was coming. And that we will have an opportunity to review our full-fledged calendar for this school year.
The proposed new programs or pathways development, is that going to be included in the upcoming budget cost of developing new courses and programs?
Yes, so any costs associated with curriculum development you would find in the curriculum committee, certainly. So whether that's staffing, whether that's supplies, any projected costs associated with professional development, particularly if it's going to be found in the general budget, anything that's going to be land in the general budget, we would be asking those folks to identify those costs associated with it.
What you propose, the cost for development of these programs, what will be that, just for development?
Right, so, I mean, isolated in that way is a little difficult, because like, for example, I believe Kara has secured a grant for curriculum development for the pathways, so it may not necessarily be applicable in our general budget, and so it may be a cost that you see, but it may not necessarily impact our local taxpayers, but that doesn't mean it's not a conversation that would not be had in curriculum. But in terms of informing our budget process for 24-25, that it may not be applicable, that specific example. But that doesn't mean things under the umbrella of teaching and learning. There'll be a lot of things to be able to talk about for sure. Staffing is going to be our biggest cost, as you're not surprised to hear. No, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
And then last but not least is the demographic study. And I wanted to make the board aware of another legislation that's come our way. And this is about requiring students to be 5 years old by no later than September in order to enter kindergarten, starting in August of next year. I should note that our families can submit a waiver, if you will, and depending on the result of the test, so it's a waiver plus an assessment to determine readiness. While all of those things are going on, of course, we're not the only district in the state of Connecticut having to deal with this. And I don't mean deal with this in a bad way, but we just understand clearly there are going to be implications either at our pre-K level that we have not initially planned for, or in our schools next year, in one way the following year. And so, right now we experienced a bubble in our second grade. We have over 1,000 students in grade 2 because a lot of families elected to keep at least 100 students home in this community during COVID. And so because of that, we have grade 2 where there's 100 additional kids. It very well could happen and could have an impact on our initial planning for pre-K across the district, and or it could have an impact in kindergarten. And so, given that we right now have our last full comprehensive demographic study was 21-22, we had a kind of additional study, but it wasn't the same comprehensive study done, completed on June 2022. So if you might recall, initially we were going to be at one high school site, then we had to have another study done because we were moving to the Carter site. And so that's the reason why we had to do an additional study. But in light of this legislation, in addition to the special education legislation, we think it might be appropriate now, given we're going into a new building, hopefully very soon, to have a study to help with, and particularly since we've outperformed our study again, hoping to get a fresh demographic study that might help with our planning for the next few years. So we wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I know we initially talked about this in sites and facilities, but we wanted to get some feedback from the board and see if there was any before we move forward with some pricing, and that we can further talk about in the next sites and facilities meeting. But these two most recent legislations are certainly going to have some impact on us. And
Just going to add, we're anticipating probably 3 classrooms worth of students for next school year at the preschool level that are going to have to remain at preschool for an additional year. So that will be it. We are currently looking through, because not all of our students are registered and enrolled. Preschoolers come in. If coming out of birth to 3 services on their 3rd birthday, but it's not uncommon that a child will register at 4 years old. So we will have a better idea probably early spring of the exact number that will remain, but it will be a larger cohort remaining in preschool, but less going to kindergarten. So we're going to have to look at our staffing and adjust that way.
Quick question. So would that be 3 additional classrooms on top of the ones that we're already extending curriculum?
Yes, it would be 3 additional classrooms.
And are we retaining the space on Cottage Street?
We are, yes. Well, right now we have extended the lease for an additional year with the option to extend. And right now, until additional plans get made, we would look to do that for the following year.
If we add 3 classrooms, do we lose the potentiality of aggregating all of our preschool students at Granville?
Not for next year, but just long-term planning. It will adjust our numbers slightly. But I am pretty confident that at least with the initial conversations with the plan, that we would have enough space, in the future. Thank you.
Right, and Bridget, our thinking is, and/or the study could impact the planning of the Granville site. I don't know what their total capacity is, but if these studies suggest something different, I would like to think that could also impact the planning of that center.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Moving on, is there any discussion? Okay. Moving on to information, the 2023 education law summaries.
I'm sorry, Laura, just an update from Kate about some law summaries that are, so it's just additional information for the board to peruse at your convenience. And this is shared with us this summer in July 2023.
Okay,
That helps.
great. Thank you. Does anybody have any board communication or comments or reports from committees?
I would just like to say on behalf of the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, I want to certainly thank everyone, members and non-members of the board that came, and we finally completed the superintendent evaluation, and we had our meeting. We've had 2 meetings, looking at 2024 superintendent goals. And I just want to thank everyone for their support and coming out and listening.
Thank you for the food.
Any other comments or committee updates?
I just want to mention, I went to Morris Street for No Child Eats Alone, No One Eats Alone, and it was fantastic.
Excellent.
I got the skinny from the 5th graders.
Excellent.
And then Julie and I also went that night to the Hispanic celebration, which was really a hit. So I saw Kevin there for a minute. But there were at least, I would say, about 100 kids there and really enjoyed it. And, you know, there was ethnic food there and dancing. So it was really a fun time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I just wanted to commend the AFJROTC students. 40 of them got up and met at the high school at 4:30 on Sunday to go down and support the Tunnel to Towers program. So they've been doing this for years, and this was a much earlier start than the last several years. They were committed to it, and they did a wonderful job representing AFJROTC and Danbury High School as they cheered on all the
That's great.
Excellent. I just want to say that school's back in session, as we know, so PTO meetings are happening. So make sure you're making those connections with your schools again and try to get out there. Go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you for mentioning PTO meetings. I went to the DHS, and the parents were, when at the end of the meeting, were commenting about the parents' night that was the previous Monday, and the lack of water in the science building is problematic still, and that was the issue they were very uncomfortable with, because there were 2 teachers who refused to work around it. I guess the other teachers were okay, but there were 2 teachers during Parents' Night complaining about the lack of water in the science building.
Right, and just an update for the board, the issue of challenge I believe Teresa is referring to. There are plumbing challenges in the science building, and so it's not allowing our science teachers to conduct their experiments and really implement the curriculum in a way that we would expect. And I think we're looking at a longer term issue that we have not been able to find a workaround right now. And so we're staying in contact with the city to try to get this resolved, but we don't have answers today.
Thank you. Anything else?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Okay, so moved. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.